This story is called Black Girl with Vitiligo Forced to Cover Herself in White Paint by Teacher. Now she's a global model. Hey, before we get into today's video, I need your help. Subscribing is one of the best ways to support us. It's fast, free, and helps us continue to bring you amazing content. Your support means a lot. Thank you so much. Now let's get into the story. Lena Taylor learned early on that she was different. Not just because she was black. Not just because she was one of the only poor kids in a school full of rich suburbanites. But because of her skin. Vitiligo had left patches of pale skin across her face, around her mouth, on her hands, a permanent reminder that she didn't fit in. And if the world was already cruel to black girls, it was even crueler to black girls who didn't look like everyone else. The relentless bullying. Oh my God, she's melting. Lena's fingers tightened around her history book. She knew that voice. Maddie Carlton. The queen of the school. Blonde, tall, effortlessly pretty, one of those girls who was born with everything handed to her on a silver platter. And right now, she was on a mission to remind Lena exactly where she stood. Maddie gasped dramatically, pointing at her. Y'all, is it contagious? Like, if I stand too close, am I gonna get some weird splotches too? Laughter. Loud. Cruel. A football player, some senior Lena didn't even know, grinned and chimed in. Maybe she's just trying to be half white. Can't blame her for that. Lena's stomach twisted. She kept her head down. Not because she was ashamed. But because she knew, if they saw her cry, they'd just go harder. She just needed to survive the day. But she had no idea her worst nightmare was still coming. The teacher's cruelty. Art class used to be Lena's safe space. Painting, sketching, losing herself in color and creation, it was one of the only times she felt free. Until that day. Until Mrs. Fisher decided to humiliate her in a way she'd never forget. Mrs. Fisher was one of those teachers who smiled too much but never with her eyes. The type who preached about kindness but only when it applied to kids who looked like her own. That day, Lena was at her desk, quietly working on a sketch, when her voice sliced through the room. Miss Taylor, come up to the front. Lena's stomach clenched. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. Slowly, she stood up. On the teacher's desk was a bucket of white paint. Mrs. Fisher dipped a brush into it, then held it out to Lena with a tight, saccharine smile. We're learning about color theory today. Her tone was sweet, but something about it made Lena's skin crawl. Why don't you show the class how a little paint can change perception? For a second, Lena's brain refused to process what was happening. Then Maddie burst into laughter. Oh my God, she's actually gonna do it. More snickers. Whispers. Gasps. Lena felt nauseous. I don't want to. Mrs. Fisher sighed, shaking her head like she was disappointed. Lena, it's just an experiment. Unless you'd rather go to the principal's office for refusing to participate? Threat. She knew exactly what she was doing. Because Lena couldn't afford to get in trouble. Her mom worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. One phone call home, and it would be one more thing to stress her out. So Lena picked up the brush. And with every ounce of humiliation burning her from the inside out, she dragged it across her cheek. The cold white paint covered her skin, covering the patches. But it didn't erase the shame. It didn't erase the looks. And as the room exploded into laughter, into whispers, into everything she had ever feared, Lena Taylor made herself a promise. One day, she was going to leave this place. She was going to rise above it. And one day, she was going to make them regret ever looking down on her. Lena never talked about that day in art class. But she never forgot it either. Because it wasn't just about the humiliation. It was about the lesson the world tried to teach her, that she was supposed to hate herself. That she was supposed to hide. And for years, she believed it. Drowning in self-hate. By high school, Lena had perfected the art of disappearing. She sat in the back of classrooms. She kept her hoodie pulled up, even in the summer. She walked through the hallways like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, avoiding giving anyone a reason to notice her. Because every time someone did, it was always the same. "Hey, freak show! How's the skin condition today? Damn, your foundation budget must be insane. Are you even really black? Or just defective?" Lena didn't fight back. Didn't argue. Because deep down, she thought maybe they were right. The war with her own reflection. Her bedroom mirror became her enemy. Every morning, she stood in front of it, tracing the patches of skin on her face, hating what she saw. She tried everything. Coconut oil. Turmeric masks. Overpriced serums from skincare influencers who promised results that never came. She even stole her mom's drugstore foundation once and tried to cover everything up. But it never worked. The patches weren't going anywhere. And neither was the ugly voice in her head, whispering the same thing over and over. "You'll never be beautiful." The stranger who changed everything. Lena had spent so many years trying to disappear that she never expected anyone to actually see her. Until one afternoon, in a grimy laundromat on the south side of town, she met Miss Viola. Miss Viola was old-school black woman energy. Sharp eyes. Gold hoops. A voice like honey but a presence like thunder. Lena was folding laundry, drowning in self-pity, when Miss Viola sat across from her and just stared. Like she was studying her. Lena shifted uncomfortably. "Can I help you?" Miss Viola didn't blink. "Baby, do you know what you look like?" Lena frowned. Yeah. I have a mirror." Miss Viola clicked her tongue. No. I don't mean what you think you look like. I mean what you actually look like." Lena just stared. "You look like art." Lena let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, okay." Miss Viola leaned forward. "Listen to me, baby girl. You ain't no mistake. You ain't something that needs fixing. You are a walking masterpiece. And one day, the whole damn world is gonna see it." Lena wanted to laugh it off. Wanted to ignore her. But for the first time in years, something inside her stirred. Something that had been buried under years of self-hate and cruelty and shame. And for the first time ever, she let herself wonder. What if she wasn't broken? What if she was meant to be seen? The moment she decided to fight back. That night, Lena did something she had never done before. She took out her phone. Opened the camera. And instead of hiding her face, she just looked at herself. Really looked. The contrast of light and dark. The way her skin created patterns, stories, something uniquely hers. And for the first time, she didn't feel ashamed. She felt powerful. So she took a photo. No filter. No edits. Just her. And then, she did something even crazier. She uploaded it. No caption. No apology. Just Lena Taylor. Unfiltered. Unapologetic. And she waited. The response that changed her life. She thought maybe a few people would see it. Maybe some old classmates would laugh. Maybe no one would notice at all. She was wrong. Because the next morning, her phone exploded. DMs, comments, likes. People she had never met were flooding her inbox. "Holy shit, you are stunning. Your skin is literally art. You look like a goddess." Lena stared at the screen, her heart pounding. And then, a message from a New York talent scout. "Have you ever considered modeling? We should talk." Lena's fingers trembled. Because for the first time in her life, someone wasn't telling her to hide. They were telling her to step into the light. And for the first time ever, she wanted to. Lena Taylor had spent her whole life shrinking. Now the world was asking her to take up space. And she wasn't sure if she was ready. But she was damn sure willing to try. The first doors open. Lena had never been to New York. Had never even left her home state. So when the talent scout, a woman named Jada Ellis from one of the top agencies in the country, sent her a plane ticket and said, "Come meet me," Lena almost said no. Almost. But then she thought about every time she had let fear win. Every time she had let Maddie Carlton's words echo in her head. Every time she had looked in the mirror and hated what she saw. And then she packed her bags. Because she was done being afraid. Her first reality check. The agency was in a sleek glass building in Manhattan, the kind of place that smelled like money and ambition. Jada Ellis was all power. Dark skin, a shaved head, cheekbones so sharp they could cut glass. She didn't waste time. The second Lena walked into her office, Jada gave her one slow, appraising look. "Turn around." Lena hesitated, then did as she was told. Jada nodded once. "You're raw. But you're something special." Lena's heart pounded. "You really think so?" Jada gave a half smirk. "I don't think, baby. I know. But the real question is, do you?" And that hit Lena hard. Because the truth was, she wasn't sure. The industry doesn't believe in her. The first few months were brutal. She wasn't the typical model. She wasn't tall enough, thin enough, marketable enough. Her skin. Most agencies didn't know what to do with it. One casting director literally said, "We love diversity, but this might be too much." Another asked if she had ever considered using makeup to even things out. Lena almost walked away. Almost. But then she remembered Miss Viola's words. "You ain't no mistake. You are a walking masterpiece." And she decided she wasn't going anywhere. The first big break. It came out of nowhere. A brand, one of the biggest in the world, was launching a campaign called The Faces of the Future. And they wanted unconventional beauty. Lena didn't even think she had a chance. But then she got the call. "Pack your bags, baby. You booked it." And just like that, she went from being the girl who was bullied for her skin to the face of a global campaign. The day her first ad went up, a massive billboard in Times Square, she stood in the middle of the street, staring up at her own face, and whispered, "They're gonna see me now." And for the first time ever, she believed it. Lena Taylor had done a lot of things she never thought possible. She had walked runways in Paris. Graced the covers of Vogue and Elle. Shot campaigns with the biggest brands in the world. But nothing prepared her for the shoot. Because when her agent sent over the details for her next project, Lena froze. Concept, abstract beauty. Models will be covered in white paint to create a high-fashion, avant-garde look. White paint. Just like that day in art class. Just like Mrs. Fisher's cruel little experiment. Lena felt her stomach twist. She should have said no. But instead, she laughed. Because this time, it wasn't about humiliation. It was about power. It was about owning the thing that once tried to break her. The shoot that turned heads. The set was minimalist. Bright lights. A white backdrop. Buckets of thick, glossy paint in the center of the room. The photographer, some high-profile genius that every model wanted to work with, walked up to Lena. "You ready?" She looked at the paint. Then at the mirror. Then back at the photographer. And she smirked. More than ever. She stepped into the set. They poured the cool white paint over her skin, dripping down her face, her arms, her legs. The cameras flashed. Click. 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 And instead of shame, Lena felt something else. Triumph. Because she wasn't that scared little girl anymore. She wasn't the girl who let people tell her she was broken. She was Lena Taylor. And now the world knew it. The final touch. After the shoot, Lena stood in front of a wall of images, photos of her, draped in white paint, looking like a damn goddess. And then? She had an idea. Something petty. Something bold. Something so perfectly full circle it made her grin. She picked her favorite image, a shot where she looked untouchable, powerful, and expensive as hell. Then? She printed it out. And wrote a letter. Mrs. Fisher probably hadn't thought about Lena Taylor in years. She had probably moved on, continued teaching, maybe even pulled the same cruel tricks on other kids who didn't fit her idea of acceptable. She probably still thought she had power. That she had one. And then? One morning, she opened her mailbox. And there it was. A thick, glossy envelope with no return address. Inside? A single photograph. Lena Taylor. Draped in white paint. Powerful. Stunning. World famous. And underneath, in sharp, deliberate handwriting. Your idea was insane. But it made me hundreds of thousands. Thanks for the inspiration. No signature. No explanation. Just the perfect full circle moment. The aftermath. Lena never got a response. She didn't need one. Because she could picture it perfectly, the way Mrs. Fisher's face must have gone pale, the way her stomach must have dropped when she realized exactly who that unstoppable, world-famous woman was. The same little girl she tried to humiliate. Only now, Lena Taylor wasn't just seen. She was celebrated. She was paid. She was legendary. And as she walked into her next shoot, draped in couture, cameras flashing, money rolling in, she smiled. Because the best revenge was success. And she had one. This was her victory. Her story. And the proof that sometimes, the worst things people do to you turn into the best things that ever happened. Lena Taylor was never meant to blend in. She was meant to shine. And now, the whole world was watching.